Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm making or sharing the making of the final 3 cards for this year for my Christmas cards. I thought I would try and make something a bit different, so I've got a couple of different folds. I've got a bridge card, I've got a fancy cut card, and I've also got a easel card that has got a vellum window in it. I hope you enjoy watching my video. So let's get started with the first card. I used some self-pattern gold paper and cut using a poinsettia die. I'm not sure what brand it is, but I cut enough petals so that I could have 2 layers of each size on each flower and enough to make 3 flowers, so quite a few. Then I used my flower shaping tool to press into the back of each one of those layers. Then I used my art glitter glue to attach the layers on top of each other, staggering them so that it made a nice full flower. Once all the layers were on there, I gave it a good push in the middle to get some extra height to it, and then I added a gem to the centre. I used the same process to create all 3 flowers. This card is going to be a slimline bridge card. The base for the card is this red cardstock, and I'm going to cut that so that it's 5 5/8 by 8.5 inches. I'm going to score it at 7/8 of an inch and 1 3/4 of an inch from both ends on the shortest side. Once I've got my score lines in place, I use my bone folder and crease and fold the card. The first fold is a mountain fold and the second fold is a valley fold. Then I flip it around and do exactly the same for the other side. The pattern paper I'm using for this is Kaiser Crafts St. Nicholas collection papers. Now this paper would have to be at least 5 years old, so I'm not even sure if you can still buy it. But I cut the pattern paper so that I have got 4 pieces that are 3/4 of an inch by 8 1/4 inches, 1 piece that is 2 inches by 8 1/4 inches, and 3 pieces that are 3/4 of an inch by 3 3/4 of an inch. I now attach all of these pattern papers to the inside surfaces of the red cardstock. So all of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 surfaces will be covered with pattern paper. I'm now going to cut 3 pieces of the red cardstock that are 3 7/8 inches long and 1 inch wide. These are going to be the pieces that go across the front of the card and create the shape. To attach these pieces to the card, you flatten out the panel on the right hand side so that that's laying flat, and you fold the left hand side up so that it's creating a Z, and then you attach just the outer edges, so the sections that will be flat, say 1/2 an inch on each end. Do that I did the top and the bottom first, and then I centered the middle one between those 2. Next I cut 3 strips of the pattern paper that are 3 7/8 inches by 1 inch, and these will go on top of the 3 red strips that we've just attached to the front of the card. So that creates the base of our card. You can see that it stands quite nicely on its own, even though it is quite tall and narrow. It does stand up and hold its own shape. Now it's time to add our 3 gold poinsettias that we made earlier on. I'm going to attach those to the front of the card using Aileen's original tacky glue. To create my greeting, I'm going to use one of the greetings from the uniquely creative Once Upon a Christmas mini cut apart sheet and mount that onto a piece of the gold paper that we used to make the flowers, and then attach that to the centre strip of the card to the left of the poinsettia. To create an area to write my personal message, I cut a piece of white cardstock that was 1 7/8 inches by 8 1/4 inches and attached that to the back of the card. I then also used some of the die cuts from the Uniquely Creative's creative cuts for Holly Jolly Christmas. I trimmed around the centre because I don't like the white border, and then attached them to the bottom of the white panel. And there we have our first card for today. Our second card is an unusual cut. I created the card base by cutting a piece of white cardstock 5 1/2 inches by 11 inches and then scoring at 5 1/2 inches. The next step is to find the centre point on the bottom edge of the card. So the card's 5 1/2 inches wide, so we're going to be looking at 2 3/4 inches. Then cut from the corner of the fold to the centre point. I'm actually drawing a line on this so that I've got a line to follow, because I am not a very straight cutter with a pair of scissors. The 2 triangular pieces that we cut off of here will then be used to create part of the front of the card. I'm going to cut a 5 1/4 inch piece of this pattern paper to put on the inside of my card. This is a Kaiser Craft paper from a year or 2 ago. I can't remember the name of the paper range. With your triangular pieces, you'll need to mark the fronts. Now the fronts are exactly the same as they came off the front of the card. Then I cut a rectangular piece of cardstock and trimmed that down by drawing around the shape and then cutting it slightly smaller. Otherwise, when you come to put your pattern paper on, you'll find that one side will be a different pattern to the other side. Now I'm going to ink around the edge of all of my pattern papers and attach them to the card base. I use liquid glue to attach them, but you can use double-sided tape if you want. Now it's time to attach the two triangles to the front of the card. I've slowed this down here so you can see exactly how they have to sit. They sit level with the bottom and they do not poke up above the top. So just attach these. Don't put any glue behind the bottom section that doesn't sit on top of the front triangle. I actually positioned the triangles and then attached one triangle to the other so that the triangles were an assembly within themselves, and then attached that to the card base. I've used this Christmas tree die that I don't know the brand name of, and I have cut the 4 layers of the Christmas tree and the pot and the little baubles. I've cut the baubles out of the pink pattern paper, and I've cut the tree itself out of a grey paper from the same paper range. I'm inking around the edge of all of the layers, and then I'm going to put my Christmas tree together. Once my Christmas tree is assembled, I use my Aleene's original tacky glue to attach it to the front of the card. I attach it so that it's fairly well up to the top, so I have a little bit of room down the bottom to put my greeting. I create my greeting the same as I did for the previous card. I use the Uniquely Creative Once Upon a Christmas mini cutter parts and mat that onto some of that gold card that I used to create those poinsettias. This is then attached to the card below the Christmas tree. So that completes our second card for today. Now for our third card. This is an easel card, and I've cut the centre out and put a piece of heat embossed vellum in there. So the card base is 10.5 inches long by 5.25 inches wide, so we need to cut that piece, and we also need to cut a piece that is 5.25 inches square. Then we need to score the 10.5 by 5.25 inch piece along the 10.5 inch end. We'll score at 2 5/8 and 5 1/4. Make a mountain fold on the 2 5/8 inch score line. I attached my square piece to the front of my card at this stage, but if you're going to try this, you should not do this at this stage. I would cut the holes in the 2 pieces of cardstock separately. It would make it much easier for your die. But anyway, I stuck mine on now. You only want to attach the end half of the front of the card. The section that's closest to the fold is not attached. I used my Spellbinders standard large and standard small circle dies to cut through both layers of that top panel. I cut using a larger size. I chose 2 sizes of the dies. One is this larger one, and one is a bit smaller that I will use to create a smaller circle in my pattern paper. I'm going to use this pearlised vellum and the stamp from Kaisercraft called Peace and Joy. I'm going to use embossing ink, stamp that onto my vellum, and then use some gold embossing powder to heat emboss this design. When you're embossing vellum, it's a good idea to have a thicker vellum and keep your heat gun moving while you're doing your heating. I trimmed my vellum down to 4.5 inches square. When I actually checked that I had the image in the correct position, I hadn't straightened it up, so I had to turn it around and trim some of the corners off, well, all of the corners off, so that it would sit so that the greeting was in the proper direction. Time to start work now with my pattern papers. I'm using a Kaiser Craft paper. I have packed all of my Christmas papers and things away now, so I can't tell you what the name of the paper range is, but I cut 3 5-inch squares from this darker paper, and then I cut 3 4 3/4-inch squares from the lighter pattern paper. I attached one of the lighter pattern papers on top of the darker one and took it to my big shot and cut a circle out of the middle. I used glue to attach my vellum to my card base and then attached the pattern paper on top of that. I did exactly the same thing with another 2 of the pattern papers to create a panel to go on the inside back of the vellum. Then I attached the last 2 squares of pattern paper to each other and then put them on the bottom section of the card. I wanted to put a dark border around the edge of the circle that I had cut out, the circle of vellum. I thought it needed something to sort of finish it off, so I used 2 of the dies and cut a ring from the black cardstock. I did that twice, so I had 2 rings, one for the inside and one for the outside. Then I just attached them to the vellum using glue. I felt that little black ring just finished that off nicely. The greeting was made the same as the other 2 cards, so the greeting itself was cut from the Uniquely Creative Once Upon a Christmas mini cut aparts and then mounted onto a piece of the gold pattern paper. Then I mounted that on a piece of chipboard and attached it probably 1/3 of the way up from the bottom of the card. This is going to be my stopper to keep my card open or propped up. I wanted an area to write my personal greeting on it, so I cut a piece of white cardstock that was 4 1/4 inches by 3 inches, and I attached that after I inked around the edges to the top section of the inside of the card. So that finishes our 3rd card for today. So I hope you've enjoyed watching my video, and I hope you will come back and watch my next video when I post it. Just a little reminder, if you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you would click that subscribe button. Thank you.